Welcome to another episode of the S.A.G.E Holistic Show. My name is Emily Sellis and I'm your host. I'm also a licensed therapist, and today I gathered the therapists at S.A.G.E Holistic Health and Wellness Center, and we're having a conversation about how to recharge. We talk about ways that we recharge, obstacles that get in the way, and some other great tips so how you can get back to your recharge soon. Have a listen.
S.A.G.E is a 501c3 nonprofit organization building community by providing education and counseling about physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. We encourage all of our listeners to find their own path to what holistic wellness means to you. We are so excited to talk to all of you tonight about how to recharge. So we have some great information to share, some good conversation to be had, and we're just so glad that you joined us on this S.A.G.E chat tonight. We have Ard Lanny, who is behind the scenes helping us out with some comments and just staying engaged with all of you. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them and we will respond to them. So when you talk, please just tell everyone your name, because everyone in our community is getting to know us all, and just want you guys to pop in, say hello, and let's get this conversation going. So please jump in and tell us, how do you recharge? Let's just get started there.
Recharging. I'll go ahead. Hi, I'm Leona Huseman, back at the S.A.G.E chat. So when I think recharge, I think solidarity. For me, it's sitting with myself and only myself in whatever I feel is my safe place, my peaceful place, and that can vary on my mood. Not a lot of noise, right? Just keeping it, really just, I want to be present and I want to be able to just kind of hear what I hear and what's going on around me, whether if it's outside or inside. Low lighting, noise is really, kind of shut down. And the longer I do that, the more I feel recharged. And that goes along with how I relate to being an introvert. So for me, though I can be very social and I can put myself in, different environments and areas when I'm feeling a little bit overly aroused, by noise and music and lights, I have to at some point realize that to recharge, I need to step away, get into that quiet place, and then I feel like I can just rule the world after that. So that is recharging, at least one of the ways that I recharge, but it's the one that I rely on the most.
That's so great. And you brought up the whole introvert thing, Leona, and I think that's so great to talk about. I mean, there's so many different ways to think about this. And so there's not just one right way, but some people will say that if you're an introvert, you're an introvert because you do recharge when you're alone. And if you're an extrovert, you recharge when you're around a lot of other people. So it's an interesting concept, and just feel that on and see how that feels for you. Sounds like that really helps you to be on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that. I'm Renee, and I actually relate to everything you just said. I feel like the misconception with self-care is like going out and pampering and just having being taken care of and massage or manicure, whatever. But for me, I need alone time. And that might just mean my kids know I will just I need a moment. I will shut my door and you better not come in, because I just need to unwind and sit. I'll just sit in there and whatever, usually I end up staring at the TV thinking I should watch something or read something, but I end up just sitting there and just really bringing my energy back down. I'm also very introverted and I really need that alone time. So especially working long days and working all week, I think by Friday it tends to catch up. So I just need that alone time. And now that we're stuck at home, I think I realized my alone time, a lot of that was in the car driving. I could listen to whatever I wanted to. Yeah. I could call whoever I wanted to or not, or listen to a podcast, or just, sing as loud as I want to, whatever. That alone time in the car, I am realizing how special that was. And so, not a whole lot of alone time outside of the house these days. So just making sure to be able to get in the room, shut the door, and just request everybody stay out for a little bit. So yeah, I definitely relate to that, Liana, what you were saying.
Yeah, I think sorry, I set off. I was just going to mention, like, I think it's so important because of kids, right? Like, it's really hard to have that constant chatter all the time. And you mentioned that with yours, and like that you just have to have that space to kind of regroup. But yeah. Sadaf, go ahead.
Yeah, I relate to both of you. I recharging, I did not know honestly until just lately that that's something that I needed, and I found out that I might be more introverted than I thought. Self-care for me though, I realized that I have to deliberately actually do in order to take care of my mental, emotional, physical health. It's such a simple theory, but it's something that it's so often overlooked, isn't it? Like, good self-care is so important for improved mood and also to reduce that anxiety. And for me, I think I figured that out just this past couple of years by going, for me personally, oh my gosh, and I'm so obsessed with it actually, it's walking on our trail and in nature and journaling on my phone at the same time. It's my favorite most effective self-care that I do. I think it corresponds with just multiple different coping skills, and that's why I like it. While I'm walking and journaling, I'm engaging in physical, spiritual, psychological, emotional health. Basically, I'm walking mindfully and grounding myself, my spirit, to experience just joy and healing in nature while I'm engaging in a physical activity, which I usually don't like working out. So that for me is a plus. I have these like ankle weights too. So while I'm walking, I'm actually kind of exercising. And which is also increasing the production of endorphins like serotonin, which is a mood enhancer. So I'm like I'm killing one bird with a few different stones.
Yes, you're getting a lot of those things in.
Yeah, and in this way, I'm building a trusting relationship with myself. I think that's what self-care is for me, letting my thoughts and emotions know that they're allowed to exist and to be expressed. This way, I let go of all this blockage in my mind. I challenge any limiting thoughts that come up while I'm grounding myself and journaling those thoughts on my phone and walking all at the same time. So kind of just getting attuned with my body and letting it know that I'm here, I'm taking care of you, you're allowed to come out.
Yeah, gosh, I like that. The combination of those, it sounds like you've really worked on that, like finding what works specifically for you and adding certain things together and getting a lot of things checked off the list at the same time.
Yeah.
I will add on to that or piggyback on that, because for me, that is my go-to, is hitting the dirt. Like, I just love getting out in nature, and I have to say it's hills around here. It's not really mountains, but the hills, I'll take them. It's something where I get to just really zone out. And I used to try to like get caught up on phone calls, or I use Marco Polo. So I would try and like catch up on my Marco Polo chats. And I realized that at the end of my hike, I wouldn't feel completely recharged. And so I just, even though there's all those things that are pressing and that need to get done, people I really want to connect with and respond to, that I have to cut it off. I have to stop somewhere and really just take that time. So, I mean, I love that we can get the conversation started with these self-care things that we do is our go-to, but maybe we can just throw out a couple other options, because I think sometimes people have a hard time figuring out what works for them. And also what you might say to someone who's having a hard time figuring out what their self-care things are.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that because I was listening to Sadaf and I'm like, oh yeah, she's doing this, she's doing that. And I was like, oh, I remember that I used to be able to do that. And what changed for me? I had a child, right? And so being able to engage in self-care in the way that I would like to is not really a reality for me anymore. And I find that to be um, relatable with even my clients, right? Where it's like, what's self-care? What does it look like to you? And then also, are some perceptions? Because like many other themes and topics, social media has also adopted this one and said, this is ours. We're going to hashtag this one now. And, you know, you see so many people posting what self-care looks like to them. And it's hashtag this, hashtag that. And I find that interesting as well, because I think, how is that self-care? Like, that is not self-care. I can't relate to that. That's too much. And it felt overwhelming to me. And then I had to step back from that. So I wanted to add, with working with my clients, when I bring up the idea of self-care, because I feel like I'm understanding that maybe my clients aren't engaging too much of that, their eyes tend to get big. Like, you want me to add one more thing to my plate? And I feel a little bit like, oh no, what did I do? You know, but I think that it's important to sit back and take a moment to really identify what self-care means to you, what it looks like to you, because it may not be nature, it may not be meditation, it may not be journaling. All those things that you do here are common, which are phenomenal, right? They are, but do we really have the time for that? And or do we want to put more time into that? I have a toddler hanging around my leg 24/7, and she's so adorable and I love it, but I can't breathe sometimes. And I'm like, what do I do? And so something that has worked for myself, but also I've challenged it with clients as well, is sometimes self-care is taking 30 seconds out of your day to stand still, maybe do a few stretches, take a deep breath, and bring in that whole idea of being present, right? Checking in with your body, being able to like open and close your hands, take your shoes off, put your feet to the ground, maybe even the soil, the dirt, the earth, move your toes, start to breathe again, reconnect with yourself. Because I find that many people, and like moms, are multitaskers. Multitaskers are phenomenal, right? We get stuff done, but we are never present. We are always outside of our body. We're thinking about the future. We're thinking about all these things. And because I do work with mothers, the idea of just being able to ground yourself for 30 seconds, maybe even to 1 minute. And that's a lot. And I want to be able to say that that's a lot. It's not an easy task, but to take 1 to 2 times out of your day to just reconnect, to be able to say, you know, hi, I'm a person. Let me get back in my body. Let me take some breaths. Let me regroup, and be able to just take that breath and acknowledge and be grateful that you're still here. You're still a badass mom. You're still doing it. And that can quite literally look like a form of self-care that might be doable for you. It can be that simple. And and you might be thinking like, that's not going to do anything. Okay, well then I challenge you. I challenge you to take that moment to yourself and do it a few times. And what you're doing is you're bringing self-awareness to when you actually need to take that moment. Sometimes just practicing to acknowledge when you need that moment is the first step, right? And then maybe you can start finding the tools that will work for you, or finding activities that work for you, or finding that moment to say it. But sometimes even just acknowledging that you need that moment is it's crucial. It's a win, and that can look like self-care too.
Gosh, when you were saying that, Liana, I found myself like breathing more, like stopping more. I'm like, I want to put my feet in the dirt.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. And it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing that we're doing, but I love what you're saying about that. And I think it is it is such a nice idea to do self-care or to take time to recharge, but not really having the time, making the time, or even like when we're so stressed, we're in that fight or flight mode. And so our whole prefrontal cortex is not even operating. We're in that limbic brain of like go, go, go mode. And that's like the exact opposite that we're thinking about how to slow down and how to take care of ourselves. So we really do have to, like, it's called the observing ego. Like, we have to think about what we're thinking about. Like, you have to look at like, are we running around like a chicken with our head cut off today? Like, okay, we are. And those things are hard to do. Mindfulness and all these practices are not easy. So I want to hear from Renee and Sadaf too, if you guys wanted to jump in on this.
Yeah, I'll go on that. I think actually I was having a conversation with my sister just a few days ago, and we're talking about how overwhelming the work is building a business up. She's actually going to veterinarian school, and she's like, oh yeah, what do I do for, anxiety and stress with having, so many hours that I don't have time to do therapy. I don't have time to journal. I don't have time to do these different things. And I'm like, yeah, I totally relate to you. I sometimes it's like we work 12 to 16, 17, 18-hour days, working days, and it just gets so difficult to be able to do the things that I truly prefer to do, like the walking. And we were talking and we found that sometimes it's just the awareness of how much we need to meet ourselves exactly where we are, and just increase that awareness that it's okay to be stressed, it's okay to be anxious, it's okay to be running around with our with our
Like a chicken with our heads cut off. Yeah. It's gross. Sorry.
yeah. And I think we came to a conclusion that what would work best on those days is just to increase that awareness and do deep breathings, whatever works for you. Like, you got to date the coping skills, you got to date the different mindful activities, or self-care activities to be
Yeah, ways to recharge.
that
And
day.
yeah,
So just acknowledging that it's okay not to be okay, to be able to do some being mindful in the moment of what is happening, connecting with yourself, being your own friend, validating your experience. Those things could go such a long way, and it can re-energize you to have that, crazy, just packed day. Yeah.
I think you brought up a great point though too, about like, well, what do you do when you've worked a 12 to 16-hour day and then you get home and you're so exhausted? I mean, come on, we all do this. We just plop in front of the TV and watch Netflix, right? And is that considered recharging? So what do you guys say to that?
Crystal, our wonderful nutritionist, actually in one of her classes really got me thinking about my self-care routine, because I remember having days being out of the house, working those really long days, having to drive in the traffic, come home, and I'd just be done. I'm like, my brain's not working. I'm physically exhausted, and I would just like whatever I could shove in my mouth and whatever I could binge watch or whatever, just and she in her class, she was talking about self-care and how sometimes self-care is choosing to go for a walk around the block rather than grabbing a candy bar or a bag of chips, or just choosing things that make you feel like really fueling yourself and making healthy choices, like eating some blueberries instead of that bag of chips, and things like that can be a part, an example of self-care, just really making better choices. And I love that, because in her class, she challenged us to just take 15 minutes and see what we can, come back the next class and talk about what you did for self-care. And I found myself just being, like we were saying, mindful, but being mindful of just making better choices. You know what, I'm going to have fruit instead of junk food, and I'm going to read a book instead of watch TV. But I think we also have to listen to ourselves. Sometimes watching TV feels really good, just to be able to tune out. And I think especially when you have when you're somebody who, like Liana was saying, always multitasking, you just need to wind down and be and like just be in another world for a minute. That's okay, but also just being able to listen to yourself and saying, this is what I need. And then also knowing that you have choices. If sitting down in front of the TV is something that you do every single day and it just doesn't feel good, like you're feeling like you start feeling lazy, like, oh, I feel bad about myself because all I'm doing is watching TV, then just be mindful enough to say, you know what, maybe I'll take a walk right now because I need to. So just being mindful of the fact that you have choices and you have the ability to make healthier choices.
I want to add something to that. That is so powerful. I think that's so great, that choice. You do have a choice. And sometimes the sentence that comes to my mind is providing our body with what it needs. Sometimes not what it wants at that time, what it needs. Obviously, what we want, that's also important. But asking your body, is watching TV what I need, what my body is asking for right now? Or is it actually having the blueberries? Or sometimes it's like, is my body asking for journaling, or is it asking for sleep? So making the choice, being mindful with your body and making a choice on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love what we're saying here about this. I hope that it's helpful for our listeners. And please feel free to drop a comment in here, maybe about what you do to recharge, because this thread can be super helpful. I think that's one thing that I hear a lot is I don't know what to do to recharge. I don't know where to begin. Like, I have all these great ideas, but I never get started on them. And then I just get into that cycle of, well, I didn't do it, so I'm not going to do it. And then you plop into your regular habit or your regular routine. So I think these are hopefully some good tips for people to kind of just try this out and see what happens. But another thing I've also heard, I wanted to talk to you guys about this, is when you have someone who is doing all these different self-care things. Let's say they're like, well, I'm journaling, I'm meditating, I'm exercising, I'm eating super healthy, I, just doing all these things, but I still don't feel recharged after it. So I wonder, like, if someone were to say that to you, what would you say back to them? Or what some thoughts would be about that?
Probably assess each one individually. I think we have this idea that self-care is like, everybody has this idea that self-care is one thing, and if that's what somebody does, that's what I should do. And I think just letting go of or like really sitting with that, like just journal for, do one at a time, and then really assess, is this really making a difference, or is it more stressful because I don't really know what to journal about and it's causing more? So I think it's just like not necessarily keeping yourself from going through the motions of it, and just really sitting with each thing that you think is helping, and assessing whether that's really accomplishing what you're trying to do. Because I think we force ourselves, like, if we don't like to exercise, but we know that we're supposed to, maybe, like, sit off and saying, just go for a walk, go just be in nature. For me, I love just going to the beach and watching the waves, putting my feet in the sand, anything, but don't force yourself to do it because you think you have to. And if you're doing all these things at the same time, you're not really able to assess each one to see, because one of them might be causing more stress than relaxation. So being able to separate them, I think, is, probably a better way than to just do them all together at the same time.
I love that, Renee, because I think we do get caught up in that idea of, well, this is what so-and-so does, and so this is what it should be for me. And, we talked about that in our first S.A.G.E chat about like what a holistic approach is too, right? Like what that means to one person might be completely different to the next. So what you're saying and what I'm really hearing is, it's like you have to be mindful about being mindful. Like in this place where we're trying to take care of ourselves, like we also have to think about how that's working for us or not working, and then be willing to shake it up a little. And I wanted to jump in on that too, and just add like that sometimes joining up with other people to do self-care kind of can give you that courage to try something new or to just get different ideas. So yeah, joining up with a virtual group, I guess, or your quarantine and trying a new activity. Any other thoughts, ladies, on, what if all the self-care you're doing is not actually making you feel better? Anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I have something to say about that, because people have asked me that before. And I think one way that we can do that is, just like Renee was saying, assessing our day. I think it's important to, when we're trying to figure out what works for us, be mindful of what excites us during the day, what calms us during the day, and just not doing anything additional yet, but just assessing what we do, what we feel when we expose our body to these different activities to these different times of the day. So, and then taking data in, right? Like, okay, when I ran, I got energized. So that's something to look into for self-care. When I was around people, I felt drained. So maybe that's not something to, that wouldn't be a self-care point for you usually. And I think just also introducing yourself to different things to see what works for you, um, and be mindful and present and intentional to know how that's making you feel at the moment, and then going from there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, it's like really assessing how you feel afterward and checking in with yourself. And I had brought up, and Liana, if you have something you want to add in, I want to hear it too. But I just am thinking of this right now, like this, the idea of plopping in front of the TV and watching Netflix, which feels so great sometimes,
Mhm.
right? But there's also that feeling afterward, like you were saying, Renee, like, well, did you feel like it actually rejuvenated you after, or like if you grabbed a candy bar or something and plopped on the couch, are you like, oh, I wish I hadn't eaten that candy bar, or eaten that candy bar? So there's that. And then the idea of is it numbing you out or is it recharging you? And I think that's also, I mean, I don't know how many more minutes we have left here, but we could kind of jump into that a little bit too, about whether it's numbing out or whether it's like really feeling out.
So I like to do both. I think it just depends. Some days I want to numb because I just feel overly stimulated for whatever it is that I did that day. And I think when you think about what that looks like, first of all, I would ask you all to be a little bit more kind to yourself when you are engaging in activities that you're not sure of. It's about not being judgmental, but being curious. Like, just be curious about it. I think we get tripped up when we try something new and we don't feel what we want to feel. So then we might start going down that rabbit hole of like, I'm going to judge myself for this now, or this didn't work. And I've been trying, and it's saying, okay, maybe this didn't work, but let me try something else, and just finding a nice balance for you. This is your journey. This is your path. Try not to compare yourself to others, which is very hard. I understand that we do tend to compare, and it's human nature, right? We always need that idea of reference. But something I wanted to add is sometimes, I'm hearing a lot of, like, we're talking about mindfulness and being present. And if these words don't resonate with you, if you're not really sure what they mean, or you're like, I'm still not really getting it, even just reframing how you ask yourself what self-care is. So sometimes I have to say, self-care is self-love to me. So how am I going to love myself today? And it helps me to bring myself back down to like, okay, that's easier. I know how to love myself. Or if I wanted to love myself today, what would that look like? So just reframing questions to help you understand what that might look like might be beneficial in helping you to find what it is that rejuvenates you, to help you find what's going to make you feel more balanced in that day, and to just try, just try it out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Throw it away and then try something new until you find something that truly resonates with you, and it's meaningful to you, right? That's the biggest thing. It's got to mean something to you. So I definitely encourage you all to ask yourself those questions on what self-care means to you, what it looks like to you, and how would you describe it so that it stays constant and more of like a routine in your life.
I love that. Yeah. And I love how you're bringing in self-love, because I think, self-care, sometimes these terms can just like start kind of flying over past us. And, especially as therapists, that's such a buzzword, right? Ever since you enter grad school, self-care, 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 to where you almost don't even hear it. But that love, right? Like being able to understand what that feels like to love ourselves is so important. So I love how you brought that in. We are at the end of our little SAGE chat. Are there any last things that were just burgeoning you need to say to our community? Anybody?
I do. I think, Liana, you brought up a good point. If you guys don't know these words that we do use, feel free to comment below or DM us. We would love to answer any questions that you guys have. I know sometimes we're just so used to using these words. through talking to each other. So feel free.
I like that. Yes, we are very approachable, or we like to think we are. So please reach out to us. And I'm so glad you joined us today. So we will see you at the next Sage Chat. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Thank you for spending some of your time today with us at S.A.G.E Holistic Health and Wellness Center. If you like what we're all about, please consider supporting our nonprofit organization by making a tax-deductible donation. To do this, you can go to our website at www.sagewellnessctr.org and click on Donate in the upper right-hand corner. We look forward to spending some time again with you real soon. Take good care.